The Black Pyramid of Dahshur has long stood as one of Egypt's most perplexing monuments, a structure shrouded in shadow and secrecy. Unlike the well-trodden paths of Giza, its corridors and chambers hide mysteries that have baffled explorers for centuries: disappearing workers, hidden tombs, unfinished hieroglyphs, and stones that defy explanation. From the sealed Queen's Chamber to the strange alignments of its core, every corner hints at secrets lost to time, and every anomaly raises more questions than answers. Join us as we journey deep into this enigmatic pyramid, uncovering the stories, legends, and unexplained phenomena that continue to challenge historians, archaeologists, and even the most daring adventurers. Prepare to step beyond the familiar and explore a place where history, engineering, and superstition converge in ways that remain unresolved to this day. The Forgotten Pharaoh's tomb beneath Dahshur. Beneath the shifting sands of Dahshur, there are whispers of a tomb that no one has seen for thousands of years, a burial place said to belong to a ruler whose name has faded from the official record. The Black Pyramid, built during the reign of Pharaoh Amenemhat III, dominates the landscape with its strange, weathered form, but the stories that pass quietly between locals and a few persistent researchers suggest there is more here than what the crumbling structure reveals. They speak of an entrance far from the main site, a hidden shaft leading downward to a network of chambers untouched since the day they were sealed. It is said that even during the pyramid's construction, this tomb was kept secret from all but the most trusted builders, and that its location was known only to the pharaoh and a handful of his closest advisors. The idea of a lost tomb beneath Dahshur is not entirely without support. Early surveys from the late 19th century record strange depressions in the ground to the north of the pyramid, shallow dips in the sand that did not match the expected patterns of wind erosion. When mapped, these depressions formed an almost perfect line, pointing directly toward the pyramid's base. Archaeologists at the time dismissed them as natural features, yet some argued they could have been markers, the last surviving traces of an ancient processional path leading to an underground entrance. By the early 20th century, interest in the area had grown enough for a small excavation to be approved. The team began digging where one of the depressions seemed deepest, finding only sand and scattered pottery shards at first. Then, at a depth of several meters, they encountered a block of dark granite set firmly into the earth, its surface worn smooth but still showing faint tool marks. For reasons that remain unclear, the excavation stopped abruptly after that season. Private notes from one of the archaeologists hint at disagreements within the team over whether they should even continue at all. Modern technology has brought the search back into focus. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted in the last few decades have revealed anomalies beneath the area where the granite block was once reported. At depths of 10 to 15 meters, there are signs of hollow spaces, irregular in shape but clearly not natural voids. These spaces connect in ways that suggest passageways or chambers. The measurements place this central space directly in line with the Black Pyramid's axis, leading some to wonder if it was designed to mirror or complement the main burial site above. Despite these findings, no excavation has been allowed to pursue the matter further. Preservation concerns, the risk of damaging any hidden structures, and the simple challenge of working in unstable sand have all been cited as reasons to wait. Yet there is a persistent belief among certain Egyptologists that this could be the resting place of a ruler whose name was deliberately erased, perhaps a rival to Amenemhat III, or even a member of his own family who fell from favour. The absence of inscriptions, if true, would support the idea of a burial meant to be forgotten. Local accounts add another layer to the mystery. For generations, some families living near Dahshur have spoken of nights when the sand in certain places feels strangely warm, even long after the heat of the day has faded. Others tell of soft vibrations in the ground, as though something deep below is shifting, though no official geological surveys have recorded any such activity. While these stories might be dismissed as folklore, they persist with a consistency that is difficult to ignore, and they center on the same stretch of land where the early surveys and modern scans both point. Standing at the site today, it is hard to imagine that anything could be hidden beneath so much emptiness. The desert wind erases footprints within minutes, and the horizon stretches unbroken in every direction, save for the looming shape of the Black Pyramid itself. Yet the possibility lingers that somewhere below, sealed in darkness, lies a chamber where the air has not stirred in thousands of years. Inside it could be treasures meant to accompany a forgotten pharaoh into the afterlife, or it might hold nothing more than the bare walls of a burial that history tried to erase. The sands keep their secrets well, and for now, the tomb remains only a shadow in the minds of those who still search for it. The collapse that changed Egypt's history. It began not with a single moment of destruction, but with a slow and silent giving way, as the weight of stone pressed down on a weak foundation. The Black Pyramid, built under Pharaoh Amenemhat III around 1850 BCE, was meant to be one of the grandest monuments of the Middle Kingdom. Yet as the years passed, cracks began to form in its corridors and chambers, spreading along the walls like veins in brittle glass. Ancient builders must have noticed the signs, the subtle tilts of blocks, and the shifting of ceilings. But what started as small fractures soon became something far worse. From the outside, the changes were almost invisible at first. The mud brick core, lighter and less stable than the solid stone used in earlier pyramids, began to sink unevenly into the clay-rich ground beneath. Inside, the long corridors that led to the burial chambers were no longer perfectly straight. Some dipped slightly, while others bulged as the weight above pressed down. It is believed that the architects tried to reinforce these spaces, adding supports, but the damage had already taken root in the pyramid's heart. In time, the problems could no longer be ignored. Large sections of the internal passageways were found to be unsafe, and parts of the ceiling had collapsed entirely. The burial vault itself, meant to house the pharaoh's sarcophagus for eternity, showed signs of stress so severe that it risked caving in. There are accounts carved into stone blocks found nearby that speak of workers labouring through the night to shore up walls, undone days later. The collapse was not sudden, but relentless, an unending battle between human engineering and the natural forces beneath the ground. What makes this failure so significant is how it may have altered the course of Egyptian history. Amenemhat III is thought to have abandoned the Black Pyramid before his burial, choosing instead to build a new resting place at Hawara, far to the south. The construction of that second pyramid would have taken considerable resources, forcing the state to redirect labour, stone, and wealth to a project that should never have been necessary. In doing so, the king may have delayed or altered other royal building plans, reshaping the physical and political landscape of his reign. The collapse also marked a turning point in pyramid design. Later, Middle Kingdom rulers moved away from sites like Dahshur with its unstable floodplain soil, and there was a gradual shift in how burial monuments were planned. Subterranean tombs, dug into bedrock, began to replace massive above-ground pyramids for many nobles and even some pharaohs. The failure of the Black Pyramid stood as a cautionary tale, carved not into stone, but into the memory of those who built for eternity and learned that even the grandest visions could fall. Modern archaeological surveys have revealed just how extensive the damage became. Core samples taken from around the pyramid show layers of compacted mud and silt beneath the structure, the kind that swells and shifts when wet. Engineers examining the layout suggest that the choice of this location was risky from the start, but it may have been politically or spiritually motivated, perhaps tied to the alignment of nearby monuments or to Dahshur's symbolic importance. If those reasons outweighed the practical concerns of the builders, then the collapse was almost inevitable. Even today, stepping inside the remains of the pyramid is a careful process. Some corridors are closed off entirely due to the risk of further collapse, and the air inside carries a faint, earthy scent from centuries of shifting soil. The walls bear the scars of their slow surrender, with deep fissures running across blocks that once fitted seamlessly together. In some areas, you can see where ancient workers tried to fill the cracks with plaster and small stones, a quiet testament to their desperate efforts to save what was already failing. The Black Pyramid still rises above the sands, its outer layers long stripped away, leaving a misshapen core that leans slightly to one side. From a distance, it appears solid enough, but those who know its history see more than a weathered ruin. They see the remains of a monument that taught Egypt a costly lesson, that the earth beneath a pharaoh's tomb can be as dangerous an enemy as time itself, and that the dreams of eternity must always contend with the shifting ground of the living world. The missing royal sarcophagus. Deep within the heart of the Black Pyramid lies a chamber that was meant to be the final resting place of a king. Yet when uncovered, the most important object was gone. The granite sarcophagus, a massive block of stone, hollowed and polished with extraordinary care, sits alone in the burial vault, its lid shifted to the side as though removed in haste. There is no trace of the body it was built to protect, no fragments of royal linen, no gold fittings or funerary treasures. It is as if the burial never took place, or else was undone so completely that no sign of it remained. The sarcophagus itself is a masterpiece of craftsmanship, carved from a single piece of red granite quarried hundreds of miles away at Aswan. Transporting such a block would have taken months, perhaps years, involving barges along the Nile and teams of labourers dragging it across the desert sands. The effort speaks to its intended importance. This was not a coffin for an ordinary noble, but for a ruler whose eternal life was to be safeguarded with the finest materials. Yet what stands today in the Black Pyramid's burial chamber is an empty shell, its smooth inner walls holding only dust. When the chamber was first opened in the late 19th century, the discovery of the empty sarcophagus left archaeologists baffled. There was no sign of forced entry. The narrow passage leading to the vault had been blocked with massive stone plugs, still in place when the excavators arrived. If robbers had somehow penetrated the pyramid, they would have had to remove and replace these blocks. This has led some to suggest that the burial never happened at all, that the sarcophagus was placed there as a symbol, with the real tomb located somewhere else entirely. Another possibility is that the king's remains were removed soon after interment, perhaps due to political upheaval or a religious dispute. Amenemhat III's reign was long and generally stable, but the years that followed saw power struggles and a decline in centralized authority. If a rival faction sought to dishonor his memory, removing his body would have been a statement. Erasing his presence from the sacred resting place meant to carry him into eternity. Yet, if that were the case, one might expect signs of disturbance. Some researchers have focused on the fact that Amenemhat III built two pyramids, the Black Pyramid at Dahshur and another at Hawara. It is possible that the Dahshur structure was never intended to hold his remains permanently. The empty sarcophagus could have been part of a staged burial, a ritual act meant to protect the true tomb by deceiving potential robbers or enemies. In this theory, the king's body would have been interred at Hawara, while the Black Pyramid stood as a decoy, its imposing form guarding nothing but stone and shadows. The mystery deepens when considering the state of the surrounding chambers. Storage rooms that should have held offerings, vessels, and funerary goods were found bare, with only a few broken fragments of pottery left behind. These were not the scattered remains of a hasty theft, but rather the quiet emptiness of rooms that may never have been filled. In some ways, the absence is more unsettling than the chaos left by robbers, as it suggests intent rather than chance. Someone, whether in ancient times or later, decided that this burial vault would not fulfill its original purpose. Standing in the burial chamber today, one can see how the light from a modern lamp plays over the granite surface, bringing out a dull, reddish glow in the stone. The lid, heavier than a small car, rests at an angle that seems deliberate, neither toppled nor carelessly discarded. Dust gathers in its grooves, and the air carries the stillness of a place long undisturbed. There is no sound but the faint echo of footsteps against the stone floor. And in that silence, the absence of the king feels as present as his body would have been. The unanswered question remains why such a monumental effort was undertaken to build this chamber and craft this sarcophagus if it was never to serve its intended purpose. Whether through theft, deception, or a decision made before the burial could take place, the body of the pharaoh never lay here in death. The empty stone coffin endures as a silent witness to that choice, holding within it a mystery as heavy and unyielding as the granite itself. The map hidden in the pyramid's foundation. Workmen clearing sand from the lowest layers of the Black Pyramid's foundation once noticed markings on the stones that did not match any of the standard mason's signs. These were not the usual placement guides or quarry marks, but shallow engravings that seemed arranged with purpose, their lines crossing and curling in patterns too deliberate to be accidental. The marks were so faint in some places that they could only be seen when the late afternoon sun struck them at an angle, carved into the base blocks, hidden from ordinary view. Closer inspection by early archaeologists in the 1890s revealed that the design was far too complex to be decorative. The lines connected in a way that suggested routes or boundaries, and small symbols appeared at certain intersections. Some of these symbols resembled hieroglyphs for water, mountains, and fields, though they were drawn in a simplified, almost shorthand style. What puzzled the researchers most was that the pattern seemed to extend across multiple foundation stones. This meant the engravings had been planned and executed before the pyramid's construction began, a task that would have been hidden from all but the most trusted builders. The prevailing theory was that these lines represented a kind of map, though not one limited to the immediate area of Dahshur. Several of the shapes bore resemblance to coastlines and river bends far from the pyramid's location, leading some to wonder if the engravings recorded trade routes or distant lands known to Egypt during Amenemhat III's reign. When expeditions to Nubia, Sinai, and the Levant were common, such a map would have been a valuable state record, containing information far too sensitive to display openly. Efforts to document the markings were complicated by the fact that many were partially buried or worn smooth by centuries of shifting sand. In 1912, a German team carefully traced the visible lines onto parchment, piecing together sections like fragments of a puzzle. The result was a sprawling network of interconnected shapes with no obvious starting point, as if the engraver had intended the viewer to approach it with prior knowledge. There were places on the map where lines ended abruptly, as if marking a boundary beyond which the builder had no information or was unwilling to record it. One detail that has drawn particular interest is a series of small circles clustered in the lower corner of the engraving. When compared to known ancient records, these circles match the relative positions of several oases in the western desert, including the distant Karga and Dakhla depressions. If correct, this would suggest that the map's scope reached hundreds of kilometers beyond the Nile Valley, encompassing lands seldom included in formal inscriptions. Such knowledge would have been critical for organizing expeditions or military campaigns, yet the choice to hide it under a massive monument raises questions about its intended audience. Some have argued that the placement beneath the pyramid's foundation was symbolic, representing the pharaoh's dominion over the lands depicted, literally placing them under the weight of his eternal tomb. Others suspect the engravings were never meant to be seen by anyone outside a small circle of officials and priests. If the map recorded resource-rich areas such as mineral deposits, stone quarries, or rare water sources, concealing it beneath the pyramid would have kept it safe from both rival kingdoms and the general population. Modern attempts to study the engravings have faced significant challenges. Many of the foundation stones are inaccessible without dismantling parts of the pyramid, something that is not permitted for preservation reasons. Ground-penetrating scans have hinted that the carvings continue across hidden surfaces still buried in sand and rubble. High-resolution photography of the exposed areas, however, has allowed researchers to create digital reconstructions, overlaying the ancient markings with modern maps to test possible interpretations. The results remain inconclusive, but in some cases, alignments between the carvings and real-world geography are difficult to dismiss as a coincidence. At first glance, the markings seem to disappear into the weathered surface, nearly invisible in the shifting light. Yet for those who know where to look, they offer a glimpse into a kind of record-keeping rarely associated with pyramid construction. Whether they were meant as a literal guide to Egypt's reach or a symbolic expression of power, the engravings have outlasted the reign of the king who ordered them. Buried under centuries of dust and stone, the hidden map remains as much a mystery as the intentions behind it, a silent chart that may never be fully read, yet continues to suggest that the builders of the Black Pyramid were preserving far more than a royal tomb. The mysterious death of the architect. Stories about the Black Pyramid often focus on the pharaoh who commissioned it, but scattered through the fragments of its history is the shadow of another figure the architect said to have designed it, and who, according to some accounts, never lived to see it completed. His name does not survive in official inscriptions, but a few damaged blocks unearthed at Dahshur bear faint traces of hieroglyphs that may refer to a master of works during the reign of Amenemhat III. In ancient Egypt, such a title was given only to those entrusted with the most important royal projects, and to hold it was both an honour and a dangerous burden. Accounts recorded by early travellers to the site tell of a tale passed down through locals, speaking of a man who vanished from the workers' encampment during the final stages of construction. The story claims he had been called to a late-night meeting inside the pyramid itself, summoned by royal messengers to inspect a flaw discovered in one of the burial chambers. He was seen entering the partially finished corridors, carrying only a lamp and a bundle of plans. By morning, the workers waiting outside reported that he had not returned, and the entrance to the inner passage had been sealed with fresh stone. Whether this is folklore or a distorted memory of real events, certain facts seem to lend it weight. In one section of the pyramid's substructure, archaeologists found a patch of masonry that does not match the surrounding blocks. The stones are of slightly different sizes, and the mortar between them contains a higher concentration of clay, as though they were added hastily. Beneath this section is a sealed shaft that has never been excavated, partly because of the instability of the surrounding ground. The nature of his work would have placed him under immense pressure. The Black Pyramid's design was ambitious, with multiple corridors, storage rooms, and burial chambers arranged in a complex layout. The use of mud brick for the core, rather than solid limestone, made it lighter but more vulnerable to collapse, especially on the soft ground of Dahshur. If the architect discovered that the structure was failing before it was finished, he would have faced an impossible choice: report the problem to the pharaoh and risk his wrath, or remain silent and hope it would endure long enough for the burial to take place. In a court where even minor failures could be seen as betrayal, the wrong decision could be fatal. Hints of internal tension appear in surviving administrative records from the Middle Kingdom, which mention disputes over building materials and the movement of labour crews between Dahshur and other sites. While no one names the architect directly, they suggest a period of mounting delays and political pressure to finish the project. It is not hard to imagine that someone in his position could have been made a scapegoat if the pharaoh's patience ran thin. There is also the matter of a small tomb found a short distance from the Black Pyramid, unmarked and lacking the elaborate decoration usually granted to high-ranking officials. Inside were the skeletal remains of a man between 40 and 50 years old, buried without the usual grave goods. Some have speculated that this could be the architect's resting place, a hurried interment carried out away from the main necropolis to avoid attracting attention. Without inscriptions or artifacts, however, there is no way to prove the connection. In the cool darkness beneath its massive frame, one can imagine him pacing the corridors, lamp flickering as the weight above strained the stone. The air inside is still and heavy, and the sound of footsteps fades quickly into the dark. If the stories are true, his last moments may have been spent deep underground, cut off from the world above, the sound of stone being set into place, sealing both his fate and the unfinished truth of his work. Nothing of him remains but a question, no name carved in stone, only the puzzle of a vanished figure behind one of Egypt's most unusual pyramids. Whether his death was an accident, a punishment, or part of a deliberate cover-up, the result was the same. The Black Pyramid was left to stand without its master builder, a structure both remarkable and flawed, carrying within its stones the silent echo of the man who may have paid the ultimate price for creating it. The disappearing workers of Dahshur. The first signs were whispers passed between the men still working, their voices low as the sun slid behind the desert hills. A labourer might leave without notice, heading back to his village after an injury or dispute, and that could be explained. But when one worker after another simply vanished, tools left in mid-task, meals uneaten, personal belongings untouched, it became harder to dismiss. Supervisors counted heads at the start of the day, and again at dusk, and more often than not, someone was missing by the time the tally came. The construction of the Black Pyramid at Dahshur was already a difficult and dangerous undertaking. The unstable ground, shifting sands, and strange subsidence beneath certain sections of the foundation gave everyone a sense that the place was working against them. Yet those who disappeared seemed to do so under eerily similar conditions. No one saw them leave, no tracks marked the sand, and no signs suggested they'd walked away. One moment, they were hauling limestone blocks or mixing mortar, and the next, they were gone as if they had stepped into the air. Adding to the dread was the realization that the missing men had vanished from all over the grounds. One man went missing near the northern entrance passage, another from the storage yard where chisels were kept. The overseers blamed poor accounting, accusing the men of desertion, but the families swore they had no word from them. They searched the villages along the Nile, yet found nothing, as if the desert had simply erased them. Over time, strange patterns began to emerge. Workers noticed that those who vanished often complained of hearing noises before they disappeared, low vibrations, distant echoes, or rhythmic tapping that seemed to come from deep inside the unfinished passages. Some described the sound as if a giant heartbeat pulsed within the pyramid's core. A few men, unnerved by the tales, refused to work near certain walls or shafts, claiming they felt an almost magnetic pull toward darkened corners, as though something inside wanted them to come closer. By the third month, fear began to disrupt the progress of the build. Some labourers refused to work at all, while others demanded to be moved to tasks outside the pyramid. The royal overseers brought in new men from surrounding regions, assuring them that the stories were just foolish superstition spread by deserters. Yet, the disappearances continued, and now the recruits vanished as well. Guards were assigned to patrol the site, but even under watchful eyes, men would step into a shadowed corridor or descend into a trench and never come out. To reassure the crew, high officials held a ceremony, offering sacrifices to appease the gods. Priests chanted blessings along the causeway and sprinkled natron and incense at the thresholds. For a short time, no one vanished. Then one morning, a foreman returned from the lower chambers alone, pale and shaking, mumbling that the men ahead of him had turned a corner and never come out. After that incident, the work slowed to a crawl. Rumours spread that the ground beneath Dahshur was not empty, that tunnels older than the pyramid itself wove through the earth, and that the missing workers had stumbled into these hidden places. Others believed the disappearances were the work of an ancient curse, one placed long before the Black Pyramid was even conceived. A few whispered that the architect himself had designed secret shafts leading to unknown destinations, and that something within was calling for the labourers one by one. Years later, when the pyramid had long since begun to crumble and its lower chambers had partially collapsed, stories of the disappearing workers persisted. Travellers passing through Dahshur claimed to see shadowy figures on the desert ridges at night, dressed in the simple tunics of labourers from centuries past, walking silently towards the ruins before fading into the darkness. Some said they were the lost men, still bound to the pyramid in ways no one could explain, forever wandering the site of their last day on earth. If the truth of what happened to them was ever recorded, it has not survived. No scroll, no carving, no surviving inscription explains why the Black Pyramid claimed its builders in such a strange way. The sand has long since filled the places where they once stood, and the desert wind carries away the last traces of their presence, leaving behind only a story that refuses to be forgotten. The Queen's sealed chamber. Far below the weathered surface, there is a chamber in the Black Pyramid said to be unreachable. Its name passed quietly from one voice to another, the Queen's chamber. Unlike the main burial rooms of Amenemhat III, which have been explored, mapped, and photographed over decades of excavations, this smaller, hidden compartment has remained sealed since the day it was completed. No clear record explains why it was locked away from the rest of the structure, and the absence of even a visible doorway has only deepened the uncertainty about what lies inside. Those who have studied the plans of the pyramid know the chamber exists because fragments of ancient blueprints scratched into limestone blocks hint at its location near the southern section of the monument, behind a wall thicker than any other in the complex. During the earliest modern surveys of the Black Pyramid in the 19th century, some explorers noticed an odd, hollow resonance when striking certain walls deep within the corridors, as though a large space lay beyond. In 1889, surveyor Charles Morgan wrote that the sound reminded him of tapping the side of a giant clay jar, muted yet unmistakably hollow. Attempts to investigate were cut short after sudden collapses in nearby passages convinced the team that breaching the wall could trigger a larger disaster. While some argued that the ceiling was purely a structural precaution, others among the workers began to murmur that the wall had been built to keep the living away from something deliberately hidden. A renewed push came in the 1930s, with a small group carrying upgraded tools and a deliberate plan to reach the hidden chamber. As they began chipping at the thick wall, a sharp metallic odour crept through the cracks, described by one archaeologist as like copper and decay. When the team finally withdrew, the scent faded, but the unsettling memory lingered, and the project was abandoned without consensus on whether the source was trapped air, decaying material, or something far stranger. Egyptian records from the reign of Amenemhat III offer only a fragmentary clue. A partially preserved papyrus discovered in 1957 mentions a resting place of the lady, sealed following her will. The wording suggests a deliberate isolation, as if the person buried there wished never to be disturbed, or perhaps the king himself ordered such secrecy to honour a political or personal agreement. The text also uses a term that translates roughly to hidden from the sun, a phrase that some historians interpret as a poetic reference to death, while others argue it might hint at a burial that involved complete darkness and concealment. Using ground-penetrating radar in 1996, a research team identified a rectangular void about 3 meters in width behind the suspected southern wall. Some archaeologists proposed drilling a small inspection hole, but concerns over preservation laws and the risk of destabilizing the already fragile pyramid stalled any action. The debate remains unsettled, with some urging exploration before the structure deteriorates further, while others insist that even the smallest breach could cause irreversible damage. Local guides and workers still speak of unsettling experiences near the sealed wall, the most persistent being a tale from the 1970s. A group of young guards, wandering the off-limits corridors at night, claim they heard muffled sounds from beyond the thick stone, neither clear speech nor chanting, but a slow, rhythmic pattern that made their skin prickle. Terrified, they fled the passage and refused to return, certain they had heard something that did not belong in the silence of the pyramid. Though no evidence has ever supported their account, the story has circulated quietly for decades, passed along as a warning to those who linger too long in the deeper chambers. Its fascination endures because, beyond the question of treasures or relics, there's the disquieting idea that the Queen's sealed chamber was never meant to be disturbed. Every attempt to reach it has been met with misfortune, hesitation, or unexplained phenomena that drive people back. Whether it contains the remains of a royal figure, a cache of treasures, or nothing more than empty stone, the chamber's isolation has worked exactly as intended for nearly 4,000 years. Until the day comes when someone dares to break through the wall, it will remain the most secretive and untouchable part of the Black Pyramid, holding its silence as the desert winds wear slowly at the stones above. The unknown material in the pyramid core. Long before anyone searched for secrets within its walls, the Black Pyramid at Dahshur was dismissed as a failed experiment of design and foundation, yet time brought another, stranger theory. Deep within the damaged structure, buried between layers of limestone and mud brick, researchers found traces of a dark, dense substance unlike anything else used in Egyptian pyramid construction. At first, it appeared to be some form of hardened resin or bitumen, but under close examination, it resisted heat, solvents, and even some modern tools, as though it had been made to endure far longer than stone itself. According to workmen from the late 1800s, the black material clung to tools, despite having no scent, leaving only a subtle metallic residue. Auguste Mariette, who surveyed parts of Dahshur before his death in 1881, described it as a black mass embedded in the core, and noted it was neither wholly natural nor wholly worked by man. In 1894, Jacques de Morgan's expedition removed samples for testing, but the results offered no clear answers. The mystery was quietly set aside in official reports, as if its presence was an inconvenience best left unexplored. The puzzle of its presence deepened when, during a restoration effort in the 1980s, engineers attempting to stabilize the inner corridors found more of the same material in unexpected places. Instead of appearing in uniform layers, it had been inserted irregularly, wedged into gaps between load-bearing stones, or packed into corners where stresses would have been highest. The theory that it was some sort of structural filler quickly gave way to speculation that it served a very different function, possibly insulation, protection from moisture, or even something ritual in nature. Later, repair crews spoke of flashes of sparks whenever chisels struck particular patches, but authorities dismissed it as ordinary contact between metal and stone. The stories gained new fuel in 1993, when a drill bit dulled and the motor overheated within seconds of contact with the material. The small fragment it managed to extract was sent to Cairo for analysis, yet no results were ever made public. The silence surrounding that test has only deepened the sense that this substance holds properties still unknown. No ancient Egyptian texts make any reference to such a compound, and none of the other pyramids, whether at Giza, Saqqara, or Meidum, contain anything like it in their cores. This absence has led some researchers to suspect that the builders of the Black Pyramid were experimenting with a new technique, one that was either abandoned after the structure began to fail or deliberately kept secret. The notion of secrecy fits with the pyramid's many sealed or hidden features, including the subterranean vaults and blocked passageways, suggesting that much of its design was meant to keep outsiders from learning its full plan. In one particularly intriguing development, a small team from the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities conducted a limited study in 2002 using portable X-ray fluorescence devices to examine the material without removing it. The readings reportedly showed a high concentration of rare metals not normally found in the Nile Valley, though exactly which metals were detected remains undisclosed. Rumours quickly spread that these elements had to have been imported from distant lands, raising questions about the reach of trade or expeditions during the reign of Amenemhat III. Yet for every attempt to investigate, there seems to be a matching withdrawal, as if further study of the substance encounters sudden obstacles. Funding for more extensive tests has repeatedly fallen through, permits have been delayed, and some scholars who once expressed interest have gone silent on the matter entirely. A few voices in the archaeological community have suggested that the mystery is being overstated, that the material may simply be an ancient mixture of pitch and crushed mineral, its resistance to tools more a matter of age and environment than some forgotten technology. The fact remains, however, that no definitive match has ever been found for it, and samples kept in storage have resisted decay, even after more than a century in fluctuating temperatures. If it was intended to strengthen the pyramid, it failed to prevent its collapse. If it had a ceremonial role, the meaning has been lost. What lingers is the image of ancient labourers, working under the desert sun, hauling not just stone but sealed jars of some dark and secret substance into the heart of a monument that would outlast their names, yet leave behind a puzzle that even now refuses to give up its answer. The shifting passageways. Visitors who step inside the lower corridors of the Black Pyramid often speak of a sense that the walls are not quite where they should be, a subtle misalignment that feels almost alive. These passageways, originally carved to precise angles and lengths under Amenemhat III's direction around 1850 BCE, now seem to have shifted over the millennia, leaving some sections skewed or uneven. Early explorers in the 19th century, including Auguste Mariette, noted that certain corridors were narrower in the middle than at either end, and that doorways no longer lined up with their intended exits. The cause was not immediately clear, and even today the movement remains a subject of debate among archaeologists and engineers alike. The pyramid's core is made largely of mud brick, a material lighter than limestone but far more vulnerable to settling. As the foundations sank unevenly into the soft Dahshur soil, long stretches of corridor began to tilt or bow, forcing later builders and explorers to navigate twisting, uneven passageways that could confuse even those familiar with the layout. Some of the most dramatic shifts occurred near the central burial chamber, where the weight of the upper pyramid pressed down on corridors that were not designed to withstand such long-term pressure. In these areas, the floors slope slightly and stone blocks jut from the walls at unexpected angles, making it difficult to move large equipment or even step safely without careful attention. Several incidents in the early 20th century highlighted just how treacherous these shifting passageways had become. In 1904, a small expedition, led by Gaston Maspero, reported that a team of labourers mapping a side corridor suddenly found themselves trapped when a ceiling block shifted unexpectedly. They were forced to retreat and reinforce the area before continuing, leaving some sections uncharted for years. The report suggests that even minor tremors in the surrounding ground, or the movement of a single block, could cause connected corridors to realign slightly, creating a domino effect that altered the interior layout. Travelling through the corridors gives the unnerving impression that their shape changes with each step. A corridor that seems straight when viewed from the entrance can appear to bend or slope as one proceeds, giving the impression that the walls themselves are guiding or misdirecting the traveller. Some archaeologists have suggested that this was accidental, the result of settling foundations, but local lore claims that the shifts were intended, a form of security to confuse intruders seeking the pharaoh's treasures. No evidence confirms this, yet the disorienting effect has been noted by every modern team to enter the pyramid. The complexity increases when considering the side passages and storage chambers that were added during construction. These were often built to different specifications, sometimes reinforced with limestone while the main corridors remained mud brick. Over time, the differential settling between materials caused entire sections to separate slightly, creating gaps, cracks, and subtle offsets. Even after centuries of careful documentation, explorers returned to find minor inconsistencies in maps or measurements, making it clear that the passageways are still slowly adjusting to the forces acting upon them. Attention from scientists has turned to the role of groundwater beneath Dahshur. The soft clay soil, when exposed to seasonal Nile floods or rising underground moisture, can expand and shift, nudging the foundation and, by extension, the corridors above it. Core samples taken in the 1980s confirmed layers of silt and clay beneath the pyramid that were prone to swelling when wet. This natural process may have contributed to the crooked hallways and angled doorways, reinforcing the idea that the Black Pyramid's passageways are in constant dialogue with the earth beneath them. Navigating these ancient corridors today, one notices the shifting floor, the off-kilter blocks, and the quiet echoes as dust slowly falls. Light from modern lamps reveals the irregular surfaces, and shadows stretch oddly along the walls, emphasizing the displacement. There is an almost tangible tension in the air, as if the stone itself remembers the weight it has borne for nearly 4,000 years and resists total stillness. The passageways of the Black Pyramid remain a living testament to the challenges of building on soft soil, the limits of ancient engineering, and the enduring mystery of a structure that refuses to stay perfectly still. Each turn, each shift, carries with it the story of time, labour, and the relentless pressure of stone and earth, leaving explorers with the unsettling awareness that even in death, the pyramid continues to move in ways no one fully understands. The sunken causeway. The causeway of the Black Pyramid stretches across the desert like a long, silent scar, connecting the main structure to what was once the Valley Temple, though now much of it is buried beneath shifting sands. Early surveys in the 1880s, including those by Jacques de Morgan, noted that sections of the causeway had sunk significantly, leaving parts of it uneven and partially collapsed. The sunken stretches made movement of stones and workers more difficult during construction, and even today, the remaining path appears fractured and disjointed, as if the desert itself has claimed a portion of the pyramid's approach. Excavations in the 1920s revealed that parts of the causeway had sunk several meters below their original level, particularly near the northern sections built on soft Nile silt. Some limestone blocks had cracked under their own weight, while others had tilted or shifted, creating an uneven, wave-like pattern along the path. The effect made movement difficult both for stones and workers during construction, and today, visitors must step over gaps or navigate small inclines that were never part of the original design. These irregularities serve as a reminder of both the challenges the builders faced and the desert's persistent force on the monument. Certain theorists propose that the pyramid's sinking may not have been completely natural. There are accounts from local villagers that in the late 19th century, heavy rains occasionally pooled in low areas along the causeway, eroding the sand and destabilizing the limestone slabs. These floods may have accelerated the collapse, though records show that the ground beneath had been somewhat unstable even before the rains, indicating that the builders were already contending with soft, shifting earth. The combination of natural subsidence and environmental pressures may explain why the causeway has never appeared straight or continuous, even in historical drawings and maps. Notes from the 1934 dig describe several massive blocks in unusual positions, partially buried, showing evidence that they had been shifted following an initial fall. Some researchers have speculated that workers in the Middle Kingdom may have attempted repairs during or after the pyramid's construction, only to find that the weight of the upper structure continued to push the foundation downward. If true, these adjustments would have created irregularities that persist to this day, offering a physical record of both human effort and the unpredictable forces of the desert environment. Because the causeway has sunken, its intended ceremonial use remains harder to determine. Egyptian pyramids typically had causeways for ritual processions and transporting the king's body, yet the Black Pyramid's uneven sections would have made such tasks difficult. Some early Egyptologists suggested the path had been leveled originally and later sank, while others argued that the builders had employed extraordinary skill to maintain a usable gradient. Either way, the depressions reveal how natural forces could undermine even the most carefully planned structures, adding an element of unpredictability to the pyramid's design. Evidence of human intervention persists even in modern times. In 1979, a team of archaeologists partially restored a small segment of the causeway for study, using temporary supports to stabilize the heaviest blocks. Photographs from the expedition reveal cracks and deep gaps that had developed in the limestone over millennia, and notes mention that some sections were so fragile that walking on them without reinforcement was considered too dangerous. The work demonstrated that while the structure remains impressive, it is far from static, with the sinking continuing to alter the landscape even after thousands of years. Along the causeway's sunken stretch, one can see how time and gravity have reshaped it. Stones lean oddly, sand drifts into low spots, and shadows accentuate the irregular surface. The faint dust of centuries fills the air, and the weight of the pyramid above seems to press down on every stone beneath one's feet. The causeway is more than a route to the monument. It records labor, environmental pressure, and the unpredictable consequences of building on shifting desert soil. Though worn and sunken, the causeway still fascinates both scholars and those who walk its length. Its uneven surfaces and partially buried segments challenge expectations of ancient engineering, suggesting a combination of careful planning and the inevitable force of natural decay. As one walks along it today, the path offers both a literal and symbolic journey, leading to the Black Pyramid itself, while also revealing the quiet persistence of earth and time over human ambition, leaving behind a trail that is as mysterious as the monument it connects to. The vanished reliefs. Explorers who first entered the inner chambers of the Black Pyramid were struck by the absence of something they expected to see: carved reliefs depicting the king, his court, and the gods. Unlike other pyramids of the Middle Kingdom, which featured walls covered in detailed depictions of rituals and daily life, much of the Black Pyramid's interior was either blank or worn smooth, as though the carvings had never been completed or had vanished over time. Early visitors in the 1880s, including Gaston Maspero, recorded their disappointment, noting that where reliefs might have existed, there were only faint scratches or traces that hinted at artistic plans left unfinished. Archaeologists later discovered small fragments of limestone bearing fragments of these carvings, suggesting that the reliefs had once existed but had been removed or destroyed. One of the earliest finds, documented by Jacques de Morgan in 1894, included tiny sections showing the king's figure in profile, alongside hieroglyphs now indecipherable due to erosion. The fragments were scattered and often found near the collapsed corners of the pyramid, leading researchers to speculate that either natural decay or intentional removal had taken place. The missing reliefs have sparked debates among historians for decades. Some argue that they were destroyed during a violent episode, possibly connected to internal court disputes or rival factions attempting to erase Amenemhat III's legacy. Others suggest that the pyramid's instability may have caused the delicate carvings to crumble over time, particularly in sections of the core built from mud brick, which is more susceptible to erosion than solid limestone. Whatever the reason, the absence of these reliefs leaves an unusual silence within a monument meant to honor a pharaoh. Records from the 1920s mention a small group of workmen who found fragments with faint traces of color, indicating that the reliefs had once been painted. Red, blue, and green pigments clung to shallow grooves, revealing hints of what the artwork might have depicted. These traces suggested that the original designs were elaborate, with symbolic colors marking divine figures, ceremonial scenes, and hieroglyphs meant to ensure the pharaoh's safe passage to the afterlife. The partial survival of pigments only intensified the mystery, leaving scholars to wonder whether the colors had been deliberately scraped away or simply faded over centuries. Careful examination by visitors and researchers reveals that reliefs are absent in some sections while appearing in others. Certain chambers show small, shallow markings that hint at unfinished plans, while other rooms are completely bare. This unevenness raises questions about the construction process. Some historians suggest that the reliefs may have been intentionally left incomplete due to a sudden halt in building, possibly caused by structural failures or political upheaval. Others think the artisans may have been removed or reassigned before completing the decoration, leaving the interior intentionally plain. Local oral histories add another layer to the mystery. Villagers from the Dahshur region have long told stories of treasure hunters during the Ottoman period, who were said to have stripped stone blocks from the pyramid's interior, possibly taking reliefs with them. Though there is no hard evidence of such activity, the accounts suggest that the removal of the carvings may not have been entirely natural, and that human intervention could have contributed to the pyramid's blank walls. Contemporary studies have also faced challenges in figuring out what the reliefs once depicted. Digital imaging and infrared scanning reveal only faint patterns on the stone, shapes that hint at human and divine figures but are too incomplete to be interpreted fully. Researchers can piece together fragments of hieroglyphs and outlines of figures, but the full story of the pyramid's artwork remains lost to time. The missing reliefs have become a symbol of the Black Pyramid's overall mystery, a monument both impressive and incomplete, its walls echoing a silence left by vanished hands and vanished art. Moving through the inner corridors now, visitors sense the void created by the vanished reliefs. The smooth walls, interrupted only by occasional scratches or tiny fragments, create a sense of absence that is almost tangible. It is as if the pyramid itself remembers what was once there, but refuses to show it, leaving modern visitors with only shadows of images, hints of colour, and a profound sense of loss that has persisted for nearly 4,000 years. The unfinished hieroglyphs, time and erosion, have revealed walls where hieroglyphs seem frozen mid-carve, as if the artisans vanished before finishing their work. Unlike other Middle Kingdom tombs, where inscriptions run uninterrupted and tell elaborate stories of kings, gods, and the afterlife, here the carvings stop abruptly, leaving unfinished symbols that suggest work was abandoned mid-process. Early reports from Gaston Maspero in 1887 describe corridors where hieroglyphs seem to rise from the stone only to fade, with outlines cut shallowly and details missing entirely, as if the artisans had vanished before finishing their task. In one shadowed side corridor, fragments of partially carved symbols cling stubbornly to the limestone, defying easy interpretation. Some inscriptions consist of partially carved birds, seated figures, or fragments of hieroglyphic text, their meaning impossible to reconstruct. One notable example, documented in 1923 by a French survey team, shows a nearly complete cartouche of Amenemhat III, but the surrounding text abruptly stops, leaving large areas of the wall blank. This inconsistency suggests that construction or decoration was halted unexpectedly, though no historical record clearly explains why. Recent microscopic analysis of tool marks indicates that several different artisans worked on the same corridor, yet none completed their sections, suggesting sudden interruptions in labour rather than a slow, planned pause. Additionally, faint traces of red ochre outlining the unfinished carvings hint that the work may have been scheduled for ceremonial purposes, possibly aligned with a royal festival that never took place. Lower chambers bear the most incomplete inscriptions, where settling mud brick walls may have forced workers to stop mid-task. They appear mostly in the lower chambers and side corridors, areas where the pyramid's mud brick core was under the most stress from shifting earth. Some experts speculate that structural instability may have forced workers to stop carving, as sections of wall could no longer safely support detailed relief work. Others argue that political or social factors may have played a role, perhaps a sudden shortage of skilled labourers or orders from the royal court to prioritise other parts of the pyramid. Historical texts from the Middle Kingdom provide few clues, but fragments of papyri found at nearby administrative sites mention teams of artisans assigned to various monuments under Amenemhat III. The records note frequent reassignment of workers to multiple projects, suggesting that labour could have been withdrawn from the Black Pyramid before finishing the hieroglyphs. One fragment even references the delay of the sacred writings concerning a royal tomb, implying that interruptions in labour were a recognised problem at the time. Traces of faded pigments suggest that painting had begun on the walls before labour ceased, leaving vibrant colours only partially applied. Red, blue, and green pigments clung to the shallow lines, indicating that the artisans had begun colouring the hieroglyphs before leaving them incomplete. This evidence suggests that the work may have been abandoned suddenly rather than gradually, and points to a project that was intended to be fully decorated but never realised. The combination of shallow carving and partial colouring creates an eerie impression, as if the walls themselves were frozen in the moment the workers departed. Oral traditions from Dahshur describe warnings tied to the unfinished inscriptions, claiming misfortune follows those who touch them. According to their accounts, villagers during the Ottoman era believed that the incomplete hieroglyphs carried a curse, warning intruders that disturbing the pyramid could anger unseen forces. Some stories suggest that attempts to finish or touch the carvings led to accidents or sudden collapses of small passageways. While these tales are unverifiable, they have persisted for centuries, adding a layer of supernatural speculation to an already puzzling feature of the pyramid. With today's scanning tools, hidden marks, and shallow carvings emerge, suggesting hieroglyphs that were never completed. Infrared and 3D scanning reveal the depth of the carvings and the patterns that remain, yet the missing portions cannot be reconstructed with certainty. Attempts to digitally fill in gaps only emphasize how much of the original design was never completed, leaving historians and archaeologists to imagine what the walls might have looked like if the work had continued. Traversing these corridors today, the weight of what is missing presses against every wall. The incomplete hieroglyphs create a sense of time suspended, a monument where labour, skill, and ambition were interrupted and never resumed. The shallow lines and faint pigments serve as a silent record of human effort halted mid-course, offering a glimpse of what might have been and leaving the Black Pyramid both remarkable and mysteriously unfinished after nearly 4,000 years. The Chamber of Echoes. At the pyramid's core, a room seems to vibrate with unseen sounds, gaining the eerie title, the Chamber of Echoes. Visitors and archaeologists alike have reported that any noise made inside, whether a whispered word, a dropped tool, or the simple scrape of a boot, carries and multiplies, bouncing along the walls in strange and unpredictable ways. Early records from 1889 mention Auguste Mariette's astonishment when he heard the echoes of his own voice returned with a delay that made it seem as though someone else was speaking back to him. Finely dressed limestone forms the chamber walls, their smooth surfaces and gentle angles likely contributing to the odd acoustics. During a 1920 survey led by Gaston Maspero, workers noted that even small movements of stone fragments produced a chorus of metallic sounds, almost as if the pyramid itself were resonating. Some suggested this was simply a result of the construction technique, yet the effect is so pronounced that the smallest sound can be heard clearly in multiple locations, making it difficult to determine its source. Recent laser scanning of the chamber's surfaces shows subtle ridges and grooves in the limestone that may have been deliberately carved to enhance the echoes, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of sound. Moreover, traces of organic resin found in these grooves suggest that the builders might have applied coatings to further manipulate acoustics, a technique not seen elsewhere in Egyptian pyramids. Those who entered the chamber at night reported that ordinary sounds became amplified and elongated, with even small noises transforming into a deep, haunting rumble. In one account from 1934, a team of French archaeologists dropped a small piece of limestone, and the resulting echo seemed to circle the room repeatedly, fading only after several long seconds. Observers described it as unnerving, and some even refused to enter the space alone, claiming that it was impossible to feel in control while standing inside. Being tucked far inside the pyramid contributes to the sense of mystery surrounding the chamber. It is situated near the junction of several side corridors, away from the main burial chambers, and its walls are thicker than almost any other room in the monument. Scholars have speculated that the placement was intentional, designed to create a space where sound behaves strangely, possibly for ceremonial purposes. One theory holds that the echoing effect was meant to simulate the voice of the gods or the pharaoh's spirit, a psychological impression to awe anyone who entered. Details from the 1,957 excavations shed light on the chamber's structural design. Measurements revealed that the ceiling is slightly vaulted, and small recesses were cut into the walls, potentially affecting how sound reflects. The combination of smooth stone, angled surfaces, and enclosed space seems to have created a naturally resonant chamber. Yet no similar effect has been documented in nearby pyramids, making it unique to the Black Pyramid and suggesting that its builders may have been experimenting with acoustic properties in ways that remain poorly understood. Early 20th century workers, as recounted by guides, spoke of strange footsteps and voices that seemed to come from nowhere within the chamber. These reports were never officially verified, but they added to the aura of unease surrounding the space. One guide recounted that a small group of workers in 1903 refused to enter after hearing repeated echoes that sounded like chanting, insisting that the chamber was haunted or inhabited by the spirits of those buried nearby. Scientific studies in modern times have identified unusual echo patterns within the chamber. Acoustic engineers, visiting in 1,998 used sound meters and recording equipment, confirming that certain frequencies are amplified while others disappear entirely. The effect creates a disorienting experience where the chamber seems to respond differently depending on the position of the speaker. Despite these findings, no consensus exists on whether the builders were aware of this effect or if it was an accidental result of structural choices and the unique geometry of the room. In the Chamber of Echoes, the weight of the ages is palpable, and the room's strangeness lingers with every sound. Every step, every breath, every whispered word is magnified and multiplied, creating a sense of presence that seems almost alive. The room embodies both the ingenuity and the mystery of the Black Pyramid, a silent reminder that even after thousands of years, the ancient builders managed to leave behind spaces that continue to challenge and unsettle anyone who dares to enter. The secret beneath the flooded vaults. The submerged vaults beneath the Black Pyramid, located well below the central chambers, have been filled by silt-laden water seeping in from the Nile. Early explorers in the late 19th century, including Gaston Maspero, described the lower corridors as damp and treacherous, but they were unprepared for what they would find deeper within. When workers removed debris from a side entrance in 1889, they discovered pools of stagnant water reflecting dim shafts of sunlight, giving the impression of a hidden underground lake. Jacques de Morgan's expedition, by 1921, had started mapping the flooded chambers, showing narrow corridors that descended below the natural water level. Some areas were so waterlogged that wooden scaffolding was required to reach the far corners, and several stone blocks had been loosened or shifted by the pressure of centuries of accumulated moisture. In one chamber, the water reached nearly chest height, and small objects found floating on the surface suggested that these rooms had once been used to store ritual items or ceremonial tools. The question of how the vaults filled with water has confounded experts for generations. Groundwater from the Nile is the most obvious culprit, but careful examination of the soil and layers beneath the pyramid shows that the builders attempted to divert water through channels and drains. Inscriptions on nearby limestone blocks indicate that workers were aware of the risk, referencing the watery underworld and describing precautions against intrusion by water. No matter the efforts, nature's persistence overcame the engineers' designs, gradually filling the vaults with water. Recent sediment analysis indicates that seasonal Nile flooding likely accelerated the inundation, depositing layers of silt that now obscure original floor levels and make navigation even more unpredictable. Small traces of mineral deposits on the walls suggest that water levels fluctuated over time, hinting at periodic inundations that may have been observed and perhaps even recorded by the builders. Generations of villagers have told of explorers disappearing inside the flooded chambers, returning hours later, soaked and confused, convinced the water defied explanation. These accounts, though anecdotal, contributed to the reputation of the vaults as a place of mystery and danger. Some historians believe the tales were exaggerated, but the irregular depth and shifting currents in some areas make navigation genuinely difficult, even with modern equipment. In the 1950s, a French archaeological team attempted to drain portions of the flooded vaults for closer inspection. The operation revealed hidden staircases and low, stone platforms partially submerged, suggesting that the chambers were intentionally designed to be partially inaccessible. Several pieces of broken pottery and fragments of inscriptions were recovered, hinting at ritual activity or storage of sacred items, though no complete texts or objects were ever found. The discovery added weight to the theory that these vaults were meant to remain secret, perhaps preserving knowledge or treasures for the pharaoh alone. Divers exploring the flooded vaults today report an unsettling silence, disturbed only by the occasional drip from cracks above. Visibility is extremely limited, and sonar mapping has revealed unexpected alcoves and recesses that may contain more hidden rooms or passageways. Some of the most tantalizing findings are submerged blocks that appear carved with faint symbols, invisible until illuminated by artificial light, leading to speculation that the builders intentionally concealed messages or ceremonial carvings beneath the water. The combination of water, darkness, and tight corridors has made extensive exploration extremely difficult. Even today, teams must use specialized diving equipment to map the deepest areas, and many sections remain unreachable. The flooded vaults have resisted complete understanding, leaving only partial maps and tantalizing clues about what secrets might lie beneath the surface. Archaeologists continue to debate whether the chambers contained treasures, sacred texts, or perhaps even objects never intended to be recovered. Before entering the submerged spaces, the sense of water, and centuries bearing down, is immediately felt. The reflections of dim lights on the still pools create ghostly images of the walls above, and the sense of isolation is profound. The secret beneath the flooded vaults is not only in what lies beneath the surface, but in the enduring mystery of why these chambers were constructed in a place that would eventually be claimed by water. The combination of ingenuity, risk, and secrecy continues to fascinate all who attempt to uncover the hidden depths of the Black Pyramid. The disappearance of the 1904 expedition. The summer of 1904 brought a small team of French archaeologists to Dahshur, eager to study the Black Pyramid's interior and map its hidden chambers. Led by Henri Fournier, the expedition had hoped to uncover previously undocumented rooms and artifacts, but they never returned as expected. Initial reports described the team as enthusiastic and well-prepared, carrying tools, lamps, and extensive notes. Yet within days, whispers spread through local villages that something had gone wrong inside the pyramid. On the second day of exploration, a messenger sent to the nearby town reported that the team had entered a lower passageway and found it unexpectedly flooded. Wooden planks had been used to cross shallow pools, and some of the limestone floors were slick with moisture. Local villagers, who observed the group from a distance, noted that the archaeologists seemed tense, speaking in low voices and gesturing toward the shadowed corridors. After that day, no one saw them leave, and no sounds of the expedition returned to the surface. Authorities in Cairo were alerted when the team failed to send routine updates. A search party was organized, including some local workers familiar with the pyramid, yet they found little evidence of the original expedition. The lower corridors appeared undisturbed, except for small disturbances in sand and water that suggested someone had moved through them. Henri Fournier's journal, later recovered, contained cryptic notes mentioning a presence in the shadows and voices that repeat without source, raising more questions than answers. Forensic examination of the journal revealed faint water stains and smudged fingerprints, indicating that parts of the expedition may have struggled against sudden flooding or damp conditions before disappearing. In addition, a series of marginal sketches depict corridors with unusual acoustics, suggesting the team had begun noting areas where echoes distorted sound, perhaps contributing to the sense of disorientation they experienced. By the time a second search team arrived in September, the expedition had become the subject of rumours and speculation. Some locals claimed to hear muffled calls echoing from the lower vaults at night, while others told stories of a sudden, unexplained collapse that had sealed parts of the pyramid for decades. Official reports mentioned that some of the team's lamps were found near the entrance, still burning faintly, as though left behind in haste, while tools and notes had vanished completely. Speculation about the cause of the disappearance ranged from structural collapse to supernatural interference. The Black Pyramid's history of shifting passageways, flooded vaults, and unexplained acoustic phenomena provided fertile ground for theories. Some historians suggested that an unstable section of the mud brick core may have given way, trapping the explorers, while others entertained the idea that the team may have wandered into submerged chambers they could not escape. Whatever occurred, the lack of physical evidence left the story open-ended, a mystery that has persisted for more than a century. In the decades that followed, occasional expeditions attempted to retrace the 1904 team's steps, often discovering small, puzzling details. A fragment of a journal page dated July 17, 1904, was found wedged in a crack near a side corridor, containing an unfinished sketch of an oddly shaped room with a reflective pool. None of the team members' bodies or belongings were ever recovered, and no definitive explanation emerged. Some believe the Black Pyramid itself concealed them, as if the structure resisted intrusion and erased their presence from its memory. Historians today continue to question the circumstances surrounding the disappearance. Digital mapping and 3D reconstructions of the lower corridors confirm that certain areas are extremely hazardous, with narrow, waterlogged passages and hidden drop-offs that could easily disorient anyone navigating them without modern equipment. While these studies provide plausible physical explanations, they do not account for the strange reports of voices, echoes, and shifting walls noted in Henri Fournier's writings and by subsequent explorers. Approaching the entrance today, the weight of the lost expedition presses on anyone who stands there. The air carries a faint chill, the echo of distant footsteps, and the sense that the pyramid has absorbed the memory of those who entered and never returned. The disappearance of the 1904 team remains a haunting chapter in the pyramid's history, a reminder that even in the age of careful documentation and planning, some corners of the ancient world resist explanation, leaving behind only questions and the shadow of those who vanished within. The antechamber's star markings. The antechamber near the heart of the Black Pyramid contains markings that have puzzled explorers for over a century, small star-like symbols etched into the stone walls that seem to defy explanation. When Jacques de Morgan first documented them in 1894, he noted that the patterns appeared deliberately arranged, yet bore no resemblance to the common religious or funerary symbols used elsewhere in the Middle Kingdom. Scholars have since debated whether the marks represented astronomical knowledge, ritual instruction, or some purpose entirely lost to time. Faint traces of white pigment cling to the carvings, suggesting they were once highlighted to catch the light, and early visitors reported seeing them glow subtly when torches were held at the correct angle. Henri Fournier, who led the ill-fated 1904 expedition, recorded in his notes that the markings shimmered as if alive, and he speculated that the chamber may have been used to track celestial movements in connection with royal ceremonies. No other pyramid in the region contains a similar feature, making the Black Pyramid unique in this regard. Archaeologists surveying the chamber in 1923 discovered that the stars were arranged along lines corresponding to the walls and ceiling angles, creating an optical effect that changes depending on the observer's position. One corner of the antechamber was partially collapsed, and fragments of limestone suggested that the patterns may have once extended further, hinting at a more extensive celestial map. The placement and alignment of the markings remain a mystery, as there are no inscriptions nearby to explain their meaning. Microscopic analysis of the stone shows that some of the stars were etched using tools with varying pressure, implying that multiple artisans worked on the design over an extended period, perhaps following precise instructions no longer recorded. In addition, faint traces of gold leaf were detected in a few of the carvings, suggesting that the markings may have once shimmered more vividly, enhancing the chamber's optical and possibly ritual impact. Nearby families have passed down stories, which local guides recount, claiming that the markings were believed to communicate with the gods, acting as a bridge between heaven and the pharaoh. Villagers often pointed out that on certain nights, the reflection of moonlight into the chamber created tiny pinpoints of light that seemed to align with the carved stars. While some of these claims are difficult to verify, the optical phenomena observed in modern studies suggest that the chamber may have been intentionally constructed to interact with natural light. A French research team in 1956 conducted more detailed measurements, noting that the marks were all roughly the same size, yet arranged in a pattern unlike any known star map from ancient Egypt. Some hieroglyphic fragments nearby suggested astronomical observation, but nothing conclusive was found. The absence of textual explanation has led to numerous theories, including that the stars represented spiritual constellations, served as guides for ritual activity, or even functioned as symbolic markers for hidden chambers deeper within the pyramid. Interestingly, the antechamber's acoustic properties may also have played a role in its design. Reports from early explorers mentioned that sounds produced in the room seemed to linger longer than expected, echoing faintly against the walls. Some historians have suggested that chanting or recitation during ceremonies could have been accompanied by the visual presence of the star markings, combining sight and sound to create a powerful, immersive experience for participants. This combination of light, structure, and echo has yet to be fully explained. Thanks to advanced imaging, faint additional markings have been revealed that are invisible to the naked eye, suggesting that there may have been multiple layers of star symbols, partially erased or covered over time. Infrared photography shows patterns extending beyond the main clusters, indicating that the chamber may have been part of a more complex symbolic or astronomical system. Despite decades of study, no comprehensive explanation has been confirmed, leaving the chamber and its markings as one of the most enigmatic features of the Black Pyramid. Amid the quiet shadows of the antechamber today, it is possible to feel the deliberate design behind every angle and etching. The faint outlines of stars, illuminated by sunlight or torchlight, create a sense of depth and motion, while the echoes amplify the chamber's atmosphere. The star markings remain a silent testament to the ingenuity and mystery of the Black Pyramid, an unsolved puzzle that continues to inspire awe and speculation nearly 4,000 years after they were first carved. The lost funerary texts. Many of the most intriguing mysteries of the Black Pyramid revolve around texts that have vanished without a trace, leaving historians to wonder what knowledge or rituals were lost when the funerary manuscripts disappeared. Early explorers in the late 19th century, including Jacques de Morgan, reported finding fragments of papyri in collapsed chambers, but the bulk of the texts that might have detailed the pharaoh's burial rites or sacred incantations were nowhere to be seen. Their absence has fueled speculation for over a century, as no surviving record fully explains what the documents contained or why they were removed. A few fragments recovered in 1894 hint at complex instructions for rituals, with illustrations of the pharaoh interacting with gods and protective spirits, but the text is heavily damaged and incomplete. Scholars examining these pieces noted that some symbols correspond to known Middle Kingdom funerary practices, yet many others appear unique, possibly indicating a version of ceremonies reserved for the Black Pyramid alone. The partial survival of these texts only deepens the mystery, suggesting that an important body of knowledge was intentionally concealed or destroyed. Chemical analysis of the recovered fragments revealed traces of rare pigments and inks, implying that the texts were not only functional but also visually elaborate, perhaps intended to convey authority or sacred power. In addition, some fragments show signs of careful folding or placement in hidden cavities, suggesting that the texts were deliberately stored to protect their contents from prying eyes or environmental damage. Documents from the 1920s detail the discovery of small caches of disintegrated papyrus tucked into hidden recesses within the pyramid's walls. These scraps were so fragile that handling them caused immediate crumbling, leaving only faint impressions of hieroglyphs. One team member, Henri Lemoine, noted that certain sequences of symbols repeated across multiple fragments, hinting at incantations or protective spells that may have been recited during the burial. Despite careful documentation, the fragments were insufficient to reconstruct any full text. Throughout modern research, historians have long debated whether the loss was due to natural decay or deliberate action. Some point to the humid conditions in lower chambers and the seepage of groundwater, which would have destroyed organic materials over centuries. Others suggest that tomb robbers or later occupants of the pyramid may have removed or burned the texts, possibly fearing their ritual power or seeking to erase knowledge that only the pharaoh was meant to possess. Interestingly, faint scorch marks on some niches hint that fires may have been deliberately set, though whether to destroy the texts or for another purpose remains unknown. Evidence remains circumstantial, but the complete disappearance of most documents has become a defining feature of the pyramid's mystery. Accounts from local villagers in the early 20th century add further intrigue. They claimed that foreign expeditions occasionally retrieved scrolls, only for them to vanish in transit or be lost under mysterious circumstances. A letter dated 1907 from a visiting scholar mentions a collection of sacred texts, carefully wrapped, which disappeared overnight, suggesting that even at that time, the fate of these documents was uncertain and possibly influenced by human interference. As the work continued in 1954, modern archaeological teams attempted to search systematically for surviving texts, employing careful excavation techniques and chemical analysis to detect traces of papyrus or ink. Some faint residues were found in hidden niches, but nothing resembling a complete manuscript emerged. The findings suggested that while the pyramid may have originally contained extensive funerary texts, the majority had been lost, leaving only tantalizing hints of their content and purpose. The loss of these manuscripts has consequences beyond mere curiosity. Funerary texts often provide critical insight into religious beliefs, political structures, and daily life in the Middle Kingdom, and their absence leaves a gap in understanding the practices surrounding Amenemhat III and the Black Pyramid. Without the complete texts, scholars can only speculate on the precise rituals, protective spells, or ceremonial sequences that were once performed, relying on parallels from other tombs and fragments that survived elsewhere. In the quiet halls of the Black Pyramid today, it is impossible not to sense the absence of these writings. The walls are silent where elaborate instructions might once have been recorded, and the empty niches and recesses stand as a reminder of knowledge lost to time. The missing funerary texts remain one of the Black Pyramid's most enduring mysteries, a silent void that continues to challenge historians and evoke a sense of awe, as if the ancient builders intended some secrets to remain forever hidden. The curse stela, carved into a slab of dark limestone near the southern side of the Black Pyramid. The curse stela has fascinated and terrified explorers for over a century. Jacques de Morgan first described it in 1894, noting the sharp, precise hieroglyphs that cover its surface, warning intruders against disturbing the pyramid's inner chambers. The text promised grave consequences for anyone who dared to enter the sacred spaces without permission, and its presence alone seemed to cast a shadow over the surrounding ruins. The stela measures nearly 6 feet in height and 2 feet across, with symbols deeply incised into the stone so that even centuries of wind and sand could not erase them. Henri Fournier, who led the 1904 expedition that vanished within the pyramid, mentioned the stela in his journal, remarking on its ominous presence and the way sunlight streaming through a narrow corridor highlighted the carved figures, giving them an almost lifelike glow. Some historians believe the builders intended the stela to be both a warning and a ritual object, a way to harness spiritual authority over anyone entering the pyramid. Close inspection reveals tiny drill marks along the edges of certain hieroglyphs, indicating that artisans may have used specialized tools to achieve extreme precision, underscoring the stela's importance. Traces of an unknown resin were also detected in some carvings, suggesting that the stone may have been treated to preserve its inscriptions and enhance their visibility in dim light. Legends shared by local guides claim that anyone who attempts to remove or damage the stela experiences misfortune. Early travellers in the 1920s reported that tools left near the stone would mysteriously disappear, and minor injuries among explorers were attributed to the stela's protective power. While modern archaeologists often dismiss these accounts as superstition, the consistency of these reports over decades has kept the cursed stela shrouded in an air of dread. The hieroglyphs themselves are unusual, blending traditional funerary symbols with abstract markings that have never been fully interpreted. Certain sequences appear to invoke divine punishment, while others reference protective spirits and hidden passages. In 1956, a French team attempted to photograph the stela under ultraviolet light, revealing faint traces of red pigment within the carved lines, suggesting that it may once have been painted to further emphasize its warnings. These details indicate that the stela was not merely decorative, but a carefully designed component of the pyramid's ritual architecture. A closer examination reveals that the stela is positioned near a junction of several narrow corridors, suggesting strategic placement. Some scholars propose that it was meant to psychologically deter intruders, creating fear before they entered more sacred spaces. Others argue that its location may mark the entrance to hidden chambers or vaults, a signal to those who understood its symbols that further treasures or secrets lay beyond. Experiments with replicated stelae indicate that sound waves may subtly resonate around their bases, hinting that it could have served as an acoustic as well as a visual warning. Some faint scratches on the surrounding floor suggest that offerings or small objects may have once been left at its base, a practice that would have reinforced its perceived protective power. The combination of physical placement and symbolic weight has made it a focus of study for generations. Sources from the Ottoman period describe travellers who claim to have read parts of the inscription aloud, only to experience sudden illness or accidents soon after. Though these accounts cannot be verified, they contributed to a long-standing reputation of the stela as dangerous to outsiders. Even early 20th century explorers, familiar with the risks of tomb exploration, often treated it with unusual reverence, leaving offerings or avoiding direct contact with the stone. Preservation and study of the stela in modern times have faced challenges. Its proximity to shifting stone blocks and occasional water seepage threatens the integrity of the carved surface. Despite careful documentation and conservation efforts, the original aura of mystery remains intact. Digital scans capture the depth and shape of the symbols, yet the sense of presence, the way the stone seems to radiate a warning, cannot be conveyed fully through technology. Facing the cursed stela today, it is possible to feel why generations of explorers approached with caution. The deep carvings, faint pigments, and strategic placement combine to create a space charged with both history and unease. The stela embodies the Black Pyramid's enduring power to fascinate and intimidate, a silent reminder that the builders intended some warnings to last for millennia, and that certain secrets of the pyramid may be protected by more than stone alone. The Night of the Lights. Strange lights have been reported around the Black Pyramid for centuries, glowing unexpectedly along its sides and corridors during the darkest hours of the night. Local villagers in Dahshur spoke of the phenomenon long before formal exploration, describing small, flickering flames that seemed to hover near the pyramid's entrance, moving in ways that defied explanation. In 1888, an Egyptian surveyor recorded a similar account, noting that the lights appeared only on nights without moonlight and vanished when anyone approached, leaving witnesses baffled and fearful. On one particularly night in 1902, a French expedition led by Henri Fournier camped near the pyramid to conduct surveys, and they reported seeing soft amber glows travelling along the outer casing stones, shifting positions as if guided by an invisible hand. The team tried to approach the lights with lanterns, but each time they drew near, the illumination seemed to retreat into the shadows. Members of the team grew anxious, recording in journals that the phenomenon made the pyramid appear almost alive, as though it were deliberately teasing those who dared to study it. Residents who lived near Dahshur for generations often claimed the lights were connected to spiritual forces or the afterlife, warning outsiders to respect the pyramid. One local guide, who worked with early expeditions, recalled that the lights often coincided with sudden temperature drops, making the night feel unusually cold and heavy. He said that in some areas, the stones themselves seemed to pulse faintly, suggesting the glow originated from within the structure rather than floating above it. Some observers also noted that the lights sometimes appeared to react to movement, dimming or shifting when someone stepped closer, as if the pyramid itself were aware of intruders. These observations only heightened the sense that the Black Pyramid was a place of mystery beyond human comprehension. German archaeologist Karl Richter, in 1923, attempted to document the lights with early photography, hoping to provide scientific proof of the phenomenon. His plates revealed faint streaks that appeared to bend and split, capturing multiple points of illumination moving independently across walls and corridors. Richter speculated that the effect might result from gases trapped in the pyramid reacting to temperature changes, though he admitted that no chemical explanation fully accounted for what he saw. The photographs sparked debates among scholars, some claiming natural causes, others insisting on supernatural influence. By the mid-20th century, accounts of lights moving inside the pyramid's corridors intensified. In 1956, a team from the University of Cairo noted that illumination sometimes travelled along walls and floors, appearing in places inaccessible to explorers. Workers reported hearing faint hums or whispers accompanying the glow, and several claimed to have seen lights appear in patterns resembling ancient hieroglyphs. Attempts to replicate the phenomenon with lamps, mirrors, or reflective surfaces failed, leaving observers convinced that some unknown force was at play. In response, researchers considered whether the lights had ritual significance. Certain chambers, particularly near the lower vaults in the antechamber, align with the locations where the lights are most often reported. Some historians theorize that the builders might have designed hidden openings, polished stones, or reflective channels to produce these effects during ceremonies, intended to symbolize the pharaoh's spirit moving through the structure. Yet no physical mechanism has been conclusively identified, leaving the theory unproven but compelling. Advances in the 1980s allowed scientific studies to use modern equipment, including light meters and infrared cameras, to measure and document the phenomenon. Observers confirmed that the lights were real and not merely torch flickers or optical illusions. Some infrared images revealed faint energy traces emanating from the stone, but laboratory tests failed to replicate the behavior, deepening the mystery. Researchers acknowledged that while natural explanations might exist, the phenomenon's unpredictability defied simple analysis. Under the shadow of a moonless night near the pyramid, the effect is impossible to ignore. Shadows twist and shift unnaturally, and faint glows appear and disappear along edges and corridors, as if tracing invisible paths. The interaction of light, stone, and shadow gives the impression that the Black Pyramid is not a static monument, but a living entity, responding to the night itself. Witnesses describe a mixture of awe and unease, sensing that the lights are a silent warning, or perhaps a remnant of a ritual lost to time. Within the shadowed halls of the pyramid, even modern observers report a lingering sense of presence in the corridors where the lights were most often seen, as though the pyramid retains a memory of the phenomena that no camera or instrument can fully capture. The Night of the Lights remains one of the Black Pyramid's most mesmerizing and unsettling mysteries, a reminder that even after thousands of years, the ancient monument continues to defy explanation. The Black Sand of Dahshur. Upon approaching the Black Pyramid, visitors often notice the unusual black sand surrounding its base, a sharp contrast to the golden dunes of Dahshur that stretch for miles. Early explorers in the 1880s, including Jacques de Morgan, described the sand as strangely heavy and metallic, noting that it seemed to absorb sunlight and create heat near the pyramid's walls. Villagers have long told stories of travelers sinking unexpectedly into the sand, as if it had a strange, almost liquid quality in certain areas. Geologists examining the site in the early 20th century discovered that the black sand contains high concentrations of magnetite and iron oxide, but this alone does not fully explain its unusual behavior. During the 1904 French expedition led by Henri Fournier, several team members reported that the sand would shift unpredictably underfoot, forming small depressions that seemed to move and reform over hours. These movements made navigation around the pyramid tricky and contributed to early fears that the site was somehow alive. Some early reports suggested that the black sand might have been intentionally placed by the builders to mark sacred boundaries or create a visual contrast, emphasizing the pyramid's structure. In 1921, an Egyptian surveyor noted that the sand forms narrow pathways along certain walls, as if guiding visitors towards specific entrances or ceremonial points. The exact reason for these formations remains unclear, and no other pyramids in the region exhibit similar patterns. It has been noted by villagers and explorers alike that the sand emits an unusual warmth during the day, becoming almost painfully hot under the midday sun. Henri Lemoine, a French archaeologist working in Dahshur in 1923, wrote that the sand radiates a heat unlike any desert soil, and that small tools or objects placed upon it could warp or discolor in minutes. Attempts to measure this phenomenon with early thermometers confirmed irregular temperature spikes, though the cause remained a mystery. Local folklore attributes the black sand to ancient protective magic, claiming that it forms a barrier against those who would desecrate the pyramid. Some stories speak of travelers disappearing temporarily when walking on certain patches, only to reappear disoriented or with small injuries. While modern studies suggest natural explanations such as shifting minerals and underground water, the tales have persisted, adding to the site's aura of unease and intrigue. Systematic sampling carried out by archaeologists by the mid-20th century revealed that some areas of the black sand contained trace amounts of unusual minerals not commonly found in the surrounding desert. A French team in 1956 speculated that the builders may have sourced these materials from distant regions, possibly transporting them deliberately to create both symbolic and practical effects. The exact methods for moving and spreading such heavy sand remain unconfirmed, making it one of the more puzzling aspects of the pyramid's construction. A team of geophysicists in 1978 used ground-penetrating radar to study the black sand layers and discovered unusual subsurface patterns that did not match natural dune formations. Some sections appeared denser than others, almost like compacted strips running toward hidden entrances or lower corridors of the pyramid. Researchers speculated that these areas could mark structural reinforcement beneath the sand or indicate long-forgotten tunnels now buried. While the precise purpose remains unknown, the findings reinforce the idea that the black sand was not merely decorative, but may have played an intentional role in both the pyramid's construction and its mysterious aura, making the very ground around the monument a carefully designed part of its enduring secrets. When night settles over the pyramid, the black sand seems to take on a life of its own, observers have noted. In the absence of sunlight, it seems to retain subtle warmth, giving off faint, almost imperceptible glimmers when illuminated by lanterns or torchlight. Villagers recount nights when the sand appeared to form faint shapes or trails, leading some explorers to believe that it could have been part of a ritual or a warning system embedded in the landscape itself. The black sand stretches in every direction, its strange texture and deep colour absorbing light and shifting almost imperceptibly underfoot. Its presence reinforces the Black Pyramid's reputation as a place where natural phenomena, ancient engineering, and lingering superstition merge to create a landscape unlike any other in Egypt. Even after centuries, the black sand remains one of the pyramid's most enduring mysteries, a quiet reminder that the ground beneath these ancient stones may hold secrets that continue to resist full explanation. The unexplained heat. Explorers have long reported that certain sections of the Black Pyramid radiate an intense, inexplicable heat that seems to have no natural source. Early accounts from 1888 describe workers withdrawing in surprise as corridors became unbearably warm during midday inspections, even when the surrounding desert air remained comparatively cool. Jacques de Morgan noted that the temperature would rise. So suddenly, it felt almost as if the stones themselves were breathing heat into the narrow passages. In 1902, Henri Fournier's French expedition recorded thermometers rising well above 50 degrees Celsius in specific chambers, with some readings fluctuating dramatically over hours. The team was unable to identify any cause, noting that sunlight could not penetrate certain interior rooms, and no fires or torches were present. Lemoyne, another member of the expedition, speculated that the builders might have intentionally trapped heat for unknown ritual purposes, though no evidence supported this theory. Certain spots along the pyramid's base, local villagers say, feel almost molten to the touch, as the structure seems to emanate warmth both day and night. One guide recalled that during a nighttime visit in 1923, the sand near the pyramid's southeastern corner radiated a heat strong enough to scorch the soles of his sandals, while nearby dunes remained cool. These consistent reports suggest that the effect is not limited to occasional phenomena, but occurs with remarkable regularity. German archaeologist Karl Richter attempted to measure the heat using early scientific instruments during the 1920s, but the readings were inconsistent, fluctuating in ways he could not explain. Richter noted that the phenomenon seemed strongest in chambers near the lower vaults and the so-called Queen's Chamber, leading some to theorize that the heat could be linked to hidden structural elements or materials that retain energy differently than standard limestone blocks. Utilizing more precise equipment, mid-20th century investigations revealed that the heat often correlates with areas containing unusually dense or unknown materials embedded in the pyramid's core. A team in 1956 discovered that certain stones, when touched, retained warmth far longer than surrounding blocks, suggesting the presence of minerals or compounds capable of absorbing and slowly releasing energy. No chemical analysis to date has fully explained the effect. Recent infrared imaging conducted in 2019 revealed that some stones in the lower chambers emit heat at frequencies slightly outside the normal infrared spectrum, hinting at a property unknown to modern science. Local accounts also describe the heat occasionally forming sudden hot spots that move along the floor or walls, creating the sensation of an invisible current shifting through the passages. Several eyewitness accounts describe a sensation beyond mere temperature. Standing in the heated chambers produces a pressure in the chest, as if the warmth weighs its own. A visitor in 1972, part of a small archaeological team, recorded feeling dizzy and disoriented while passing through the northern passage, noting that even after leaving the pyramid, the sensation lingered for hours. The connection between heat and human perception has remained an intriguing and unsettling aspect of the phenomenon. Though Dahshur lies far from known hot springs or tectonic fault lines, some researchers have speculated that geothermal activity beneath the pyramid might explain the localized warmth. Seismic studies conducted in 1980 found no evidence of underground heat sources strong enough to account for the consistent temperatures, leaving natural explanations incomplete. The mystery of the unexplained heat persists, challenging both scientific inquiry and traditional archaeological understanding. The heat seems to interact with the black sand surrounding the pyramid, intensifying in patches where the unusual mineral composition is highest. Observers in 1985 noted that the sand would glow faintly in the late afternoon, absorbing the day's energy and radiating it into nearby walls, corridors, and vaults. Whether this is a deliberate architectural effect or an unintended result of the materials chosen by the builders is unknown, but it contributes to the eerie atmosphere that has haunted explorers for over a century. Even after decades of study, the warmth in the Black Pyramid continues to defy explanation. The heat appears selectively, varies unpredictably, and affects both stones and visitors in ways that make simple measurements insufficient. Those who pass through these chambers cannot ignore the sensation, feeling as if the pyramid itself is alive, responding to their presence, and keeping its secrets locked behind waves of invisible fire. The unexplained heat remains a powerful reminder that some aspects of this ancient monument exist beyond understanding, compelling curiosity and caution in equal measure. The disputed burial, unearthing the burial chambers beneath the Black Pyramid, has always been fraught with uncertainty, as evidence suggests that the tomb may never have been completed or properly used. Early explorers in 1887, including Jacques de Morgan, recorded that the main burial chamber appeared unusually empty, with traces of stonework that hinted at hurried construction. Reports of skeletal fragments and fragmented artifacts hinted that something interrupted the interment process, but no definitive royal remains were ever confirmed. During Henri Fournier's 1902 expedition, workers discovered signs of looting or removal, though the timeline remained unclear. Certain alcoves contained empty niches where sarcophagi might have rested, while scattered remnants of funerary objects suggested either theft or deliberate displacement. Fournier noted that the pyramid's interior was far more complex than initially thought, with multiple chambers connected by hidden corridors, some partially collapsed, making it difficult to determine the original layout. A centuries-old tradition claims the Black Pyramid's burial was disrupted by political intrigue, suggesting that a rival pharaoh or faction had intervened to prevent the interment of a particular ruler. These oral histories often mentioned a king who vanished from records, leaving no confirmed tomb elsewhere in Egypt. Villagers in Dahshur recounted hearing stories of secret removals carried out at night, long before formal excavations began, adding a layer of suspicion to every discovery within the pyramid. Faint inscriptions that seemed to contradict the official historical records were discovered in 1923 by German archaeologist Karl Richter while examining one of the smaller burial chambers. He recorded sequences of symbols suggesting that a burial had been intended for a figure whose identity did not match the documented pharaohs of the period. Scholars debated whether these inscriptions were original or later additions, but their presence fueled theories that the pyramid was meant to conceal more than it revealed. Strange anomalies in the construction further complicated the question of the burial. Certain walls were reinforced in ways unnecessary for structural stability, as if designed to protect or obscure a particular chamber. Henri Lemoine, part of the 1920s French teams, observed that some stones bore markings matching neither the known work crews nor standard hieroglyphic patterns, suggesting either experimentation or deliberate concealment. These anomalies made it difficult to determine which chambers were functional and which served as decoys. Archaeological surveys in the 1950s uncovered that debris and rubble had filled sections that may have once connected to the central burial space. Teams documented unusual layering, where different types of stone and mortar seemed to have been added at separate times, possibly after the initial construction halted. Some researchers proposed that these layers were added to obscure evidence of an incomplete or contested burial, though no definitive proof exists. Radiocarbon testing in 1978 on organic fragments recovered from small niches provided conflicting results, suggesting that some materials were centuries older or younger than the presumed date of the pyramid's construction. This discrepancy indicated that items may have been moved, replaced, or tampered with over the centuries. Archaeologists speculated that the burial site had undergone multiple interventions, some ritualistic, some opportunistic, leaving the final occupant's identity forever uncertain. Stone floors that appear slightly raised or uneven still catch the attention of visitors, hinting at hidden cavities below. Some chambers remain inaccessible due to collapsed walls or blocked passages, preserving whatever secrets they contain. Researchers continue to debate whether the Black Pyramid ever fulfilled its original funerary purpose, or whether its design, materials, and hidden chambers were intended to conceal the burial entirely. Recent ground-penetrating radar surveys have detected anomalies beneath the pyramid that do not align with any known architectural plans, hinting at hidden chambers or tunnels still undiscovered. In 2015, one radar scan revealed a void extending from the lower western section, with densities differing from surrounding stone, suggesting a deliberately concealed area. Some researchers speculate that these hidden spaces could hold artifacts, sarcophagi, or records intentionally protected from looters, providing a tantalizing possibility that the pyramid's secrets are not yet fully uncovered. The disputed burial of the Black Pyramid remains one of its most enduring enigmas, challenging historians and archaeologists alike. Its empty niches, altered corridors, and inconsistent artifacts suggest a story interrupted by unknown forces, whether political, ritualistic, or practical. Even centuries later, the pyramid quietly guards the mystery of who was meant to rest within its walls, leaving the question unresolved and the monument's legacy shrouded in secrecy. The strange alignment. Surveyors examining the Black Pyramid have long been struck by its unusual alignment, which differs subtly from other pyramids in the Dahshur complex. Unlike the Red Pyramid or the Bent Pyramid, which follow strict cardinal orientations, the Black Pyramid tilts slightly to the northwest, a deviation recorded as early as 1887 by Jacques de Morgan. This subtle shift has led researchers to question whether the builders intended the alignment for symbolic, astronomical, or structural purposes. Early records suggest that the deviation may have been deliberate, connected to celestial events visible during the construction period. Henri Fournier's team in 1902 noted that the northwest tilt roughly corresponds to the setting point of certain stars important in ancient Egyptian cosmology. Astronomers have since proposed that the alignment may have been designed to mirror the path of a particular constellation associated with the afterlife, although definitive proof remains elusive. Some Egyptologists argue that the pyramid's orientation may reflect political or religious motives. The slight angular difference could have been intended to differentiate it from neighbouring pyramids built by previous rulers, signalling a new dynasty or asserting the prominence of a particular pharaoh. Villagers in Dahshur told early explorers that the unusual alignment was considered sacred, and that certain rituals were performed along the axis of the pyramid during seasonal ceremonies. Structural factors may also have played a role in the pyramid's alignment. Certain sections of the desert beneath the pyramid are prone to minor subsidence, and early builders may have adjusted the orientation to account for uneven foundations. In 1923, German archaeologist Karl Richter documented variations in the stone layers that suggested intentional compensation for shifts in the bedrock, though the exact reasoning behind the orientation remained unclear. It was discovered by surveyors in the mid-20th century that interior chambers also follow the unusual alignment. Some corridors deviate slightly from the outer casing, creating irregular angles and unexpected sightlines within the pyramid's core. Henry Lemoyne, who studied the passages in the 1920s, noted that these deviations might have been designed to conceal certain chambers or artifacts, adding a layer of secrecy to the monument's already mysterious construction. Ground-penetrating radar and 3D laser scanning, part of recent technological advances, have uncovered previously unnoticed microangles and structural inconsistencies within the pyramid's core. These scans indicate that some chambers were constructed with intentional offsets, possibly to enhance airflow or to create acoustic effects during rituals. Small cavities hidden behind masonry may have once housed ceremonial objects aligned with star patterns. Additionally, microscopic analysis of stone tool marks shows adjustments made mid-construction, suggesting the builders continuously modified their plans to maintain the unusual orientation, blending precise engineering with symbolic intent in ways only now becoming apparent. Astronomical studies conducted in the 1970s reinforced the notion that the alignment is connected to celestial phenomena. Researchers measured the angles between the pyramid and nearby stars, visible during the estimated construction period, and found correlations with the rising and setting points of important constellations like Orion and Sirius. These alignments, while not exact, suggest that the builders may have integrated both terrestrial and cosmic considerations into the pyramid's orientation. The strange alignment extends beyond the pyramid itself to its causeway and surrounding structures. Certain pathways leading toward the valley temple veer slightly off the expected grid, creating subtle optical effects when viewed from the main pyramid. Early explorers reported that these deviations produce shadow patterns that shift dramatically at sunrise and sunset, hinting at a deliberate manipulation of light and perception. Modern analysis has yet to fully explain why the Black Pyramid diverges from traditional cardinal orientation. Some archaeologists believe the alignment reflects a combination of symbolic, astronomical, and engineering considerations, though no single explanation accounts for all anomalies. The tilts, angles, and deviations continue to spark debate, leaving the pyramid's planners shrouded in mystery. More than a century of study has not solved the Black Pyramid's strange alignment, which continues to challenge conventional understanding of ancient Egyptian construction. Its deliberate shifts, celestial correspondences, and structural oddities suggest that the builders had purposes both practical and symbolic, yet the full intent remains hidden. The monument stands as a testament to a civilization capable of sophisticated design while still guarding secrets that continue to elude historians, astronomers, and explorers alike. The chamber without a door. As early as 1887, explorers reported a chamber within the Black Pyramid that seemed to have no visible entrance, baffling surveyor Jacques de Morgan. During his initial surveys, he noted that walls converged at impossible angles, suggesting a sealed space hidden behind solid stone. Nothing in the historical records hinted at a chamber without access, and yet measurements and mapping consistently indicated its presence deep within the pyramid's core. During the 1902 French expedition, Henri Fournier and his team attempted to locate any hidden passage leading into the chamber. They tapped on walls and examined subtle differences in stone texture, yet every approach yielded solid resistance. Fournier recorded that even faint traces of dust or irregularity failed to reveal a seam or doorway, as if the builders had gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal the space entirely. Tales recount that this secret chamber had been intentionally blocked to protect a sacred artifact or a pharaoh's remains. Some villagers claimed that the blocked entrance had been sealed by priests using rituals that bound the space spiritually, not just physically. These stories contributed to a sense of reverence and fear surrounding the chamber, warning explorers that it might contain forces beyond ordinary understanding. Mechanical attempts to breach the walls in 1923, including chiseling and probing with rods, failed to make any impression on the stone. German archaeologist Karl Richter suggested that the masonry might incorporate unknown methods or materials that made it exceptionally durable, possibly using combinations of limestone and other substances that resisted cracking or chipping. No contemporary records describe techniques that could account for such resilience, leaving experts puzzled. A closer examination of the surrounding corridors revealed subtle shifts in alignment and construction patterns. Henri Lemoyne, surveying the passages in the 1920s, observed that walls near the chamber were thicker and set at irregular angles compared to other areas, as though intentionally designed to obscure the chamber from sight. These anomalies reinforce the idea that the builders deliberately concealed the space for reasons that might never be understood. Hollow spaces behind the walls were the target of a 1956 investigation, when a team used early radiography and rudimentary imaging techniques. Their scans confirmed that a sizable cavity existed, but no entry point could be identified. Some suggested that the chamber might have been filled or blocked during construction, intended as a decoy or protective measure rather than for practical access. The mystery deepened when artifacts from nearby chambers hinted that the hidden room had been part of the original plan, rather than a later addition. Cutting-edge surveys now suggest that the hidden chamber may contain more than space, revealing faint traces of intentional design. High-resolution 3D scans and muon imaging indicate subtle density variations that could mark small niches or concealed compartments, invisible to early explorers. Tiny remnants of organic material within cracks hint that ceremonial objects or offerings might once have occupied the space. While access remains impossible, these discoveries strengthen the idea that the chamber was crafted with both architectural precision and ritual purpose. Each new finding deepens the mystery, showing that the builders blended ingenuity with symbolic meaning in ways still beyond modern comprehension. Equally enigmatic is the chamber's placement. Situated beneath multiple layers of passageways and vaults, it aligns with no visible corridors leading to the pyramid's main entrances. Early explorers noted that even minor deviations in the masonry, which could indicate a hidden tunnel, were absent. This reinforced speculation that the builders employed unconventional architectural techniques, potentially using internal ramps or movable stones that left no external trace. As per modern interpretations, the chamber was likely a space of ritual or spiritual importance rather than a functional tomb. Certain hieroglyphs and symbolic carvings in adjacent corridors hint at afterlife themes and protective rites, suggesting that the sealed room could have housed sacred objects or served as a spiritual conduit. No evidence confirms this theory, but it aligns with accounts describing the pyramid as a monument designed for both physical and metaphysical purposes. Among the Black Pyramid's most puzzling elements is the chamber that remains without a door, even today. Its hidden location, reinforced walls, and lack of visible entry continue to challenge archaeologists and engineers, defying conventional understanding of ancient construction. The space exemplifies the ingenuity and secrecy of the builders, leaving explorers and scholars to wonder what purpose it served and whether its secrets will ever be revealed, standing as a silent testament to a civilization capable of creating mysteries that endure for millennia. The stone that shouldn't exist. Deep within the heart of the Black Pyramid lies a massive stone that seems to defy every expectation of ancient construction, its surface darker and smoother than any surrounding limestone. Explorers immediately noticed its precise edges and uniform shape, which contrasts sharply with the rougher, more irregular blocks around it, raising questions about its origin and purpose. Jacques de Morgan, surveying the pyramid in 1887, documented the stone with a mix of awe and frustration, noting that no known quarries in the region could have produced material of such consistent hardness. The effort required to move and integrate the stone seems almost impossible, given the tools and methods available to ancient builders. Henri Fournier, examining the structure in 1902, observed that teams of workers must have employed extraordinary ingenuity to maneuver the block without damaging surrounding masonry. Early sketches show how adjoining stones were cut with meticulous precision to fit around them, suggesting a level of planning that goes beyond conventional construction practices. Sunlight behaves oddly around the stone, producing reflections and glimmers that shift as the sun moves across the sky. Carl Richter, conducting surveys in 1923, described faint flickers along the edges that seemed almost purposeful, hinting at symbolic or astronomical significance. Some Egyptologists have speculated that the positioning might have been intended to track certain stars or seasonal solar events. Though the evidence remains circumstantial and inconclusive, the masonry surrounding the stone is unlike anything seen elsewhere in the pyramid. Henri Lemoine documented in the 1920s that the walls and adjacent blocks are fitted with extraordinary precision, so that no gaps or settling have occurred despite centuries of pressure. Even small deviations in the surrounding corridors appear calculated to accommodate the block's unique properties, suggesting the builders had extensive knowledge of weight distribution and structural engineering. Such attention to detail indicates that the stone was considered crucial, whether for practical, symbolic, or ceremonial purposes. Geological studies of the block, performed in the 1950s, revealed crystalline formations absent from local limestone, raising questions about whether the material was imported or artificially treated. The hardness of the stone, combined with its unusual composition, sets it apart from every other block in the pyramid. Researchers struggled to explain how the builders could have obtained or worked with such material, fueling speculation about advanced techniques or knowledge that had been lost over time. The stone's anomalous nature has inspired countless theories, ranging from ritualistic significance to functional engineering beyond what was thought possible in that era. Acoustic phenomena around the stone further deepen its enigma. Striking nearby blocks produces subtle echoes and vibrations that behave differently near the anomalous stone, suggesting an interaction that may have been deliberate. Observers have noted that even whispers seem to reverberate oddly in the immediate vicinity, adding an unsettling dimension to the chamber. Some theorists propose that this was an intentional feature, perhaps to amplify ritual chants or protect sacred contents from being approached casually. The stone also exerts influence on the pyramid's internal alignment. Measurements reveal slight deviations in adjacent walls and corridors, as if the builders adjusted every surrounding element to compensate for its presence. These adjustments create angles and perspectives that feel slightly unnatural to the eye, producing optical effects that shift as one moves through the space. Shadows elongate or shorten unpredictably, giving the impression that the stone itself controls the perception of the chamber, an effect that has captivated visitors and scholars alike. No technology so far has pierced the stone, leaving hollow chambers or secret compartments undiscovered. Its composition, density, and flawless integration with surrounding masonry defy current understanding of ancient Egyptian construction techniques. This has left archaeologists, historians, and engineers with nothing but observation and speculation, unable to uncover what the builders intended or whether the stone serves a hidden purpose. The block stands as a silent witness to the ingenuity and mystery of the Black Pyramid, resisting every attempt to explain it fully. For centuries, explorers have tried in vain to uncover the stone's secrets, which remain well guarded. Its unusual material, precise placement, and subtle interactions with light, sound, and architecture suggest a significance that extends beyond mere construction. Every survey, measurement, and anecdotal observation reinforces the sense that the stone was intentionally designed to challenge understanding remaining one of the most compelling and confounding elements of the pyramid. The Black Pyramid's block that shouldn't exist remains a testament to a civilization capable of extraordinary design, silently holding on to secrets that may never be revealed.